Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So Terry McLaurin is seeking a second opinion on his quad injury. He's getting more information as to how to go about the process of working his way back onto the field. His status for Sunday's game against the Atlanta Falcons right now is unknown and up in the air. It feels like he's probably going to miss the game, to be honest with you. Obviously, I don't know. I'm no doctor, and I did not sleep at a Holiday Inn last night, so we can't speculate. But anytime you seek a second opinion, it's usually not a good thing, right? Usually when you're looking for more information, if the information you get the first time is good news, you're not looking for more good news, right? One good opinion from a doctor that gives you what you're trying to hear is all you need to hear, usually. It's when you don't get the information that you want to hear the first time is when you start searching for more information. So this doesn't sound good. Sounds like something that's going to keep him out of at least one game, possibly more. We'll get an update from DQ tomorrow as to whether he will practice and what his status will be going forward. Hopefully we get the day-to-day tag that we got with Jaden. And if that's the case, that's good. If you get that he's already out of Sunday's game, then you know it's pretty significant. This was the tweet from Adam Schefter today. Washington wide receiver Terry McLaurin is uncertain to play Sunday versus Atlanta due to his quad injury, per source. He's still seeking more information about the injury. So this is significant because, one, Terry McLaurin doesn't miss games. He's been basically an Iron Man for this team over the life of his career since he was drafted here back in 2019. He's missed one game in his NFL career. One. And that was back at the back end of his rookie season with a concussion. That is it. He's played through injuries. He's been a tough guy. And one of the talking points this summer about his contract was his age. And one of the things that Terry pointed to was his ability to stay healthy. So now you've got a lot of these people coming out of the woodworks, pointing to his injury, saying, hey, you said you weren't like the typical 30-year-old wide receiver who gets injured. And now here he is injured. So, of course, some of this is going to blow back into his face. However, you can't control injuries. He was stretching for the goal line. That's when he strained his quad. Hopefully it is not serious because, again, he is the one true vertical threat that we have on this football team. There's already no Noah Brown. For as much shit as we talk about Noah Brown and his injury situation, he's not available. You take Terry out of this lineup, and essentially it's Debo and a bunch of funny lookings. All right. That's no way to be. And if Terry can't go this week, they're going to have to do something at receiver unless they feel like pulling up the rookie undrafted wide receiver, Ja'Cory Brooks. So we'll see what they decide to do. You're already bringing up and activating every week, essentially, Chris Moore. I think he has been moved up to the 53-man roster at this point, if I'm not mistaken. I believe with some of the injuries that happened last week, Chris Moore was pulled up to the 53-man roster. He may not have been. I thought him and Jalen Holmes were both pulled up to the 53-man roster with the injuries to Dietrich Wise and Austin Eckler. I could be wrong about that, but whatever the case may be, you're already, using Chris Moore probably a little bit more than any of us are comfortable with. He did have 2 catches last week, and both were for first down. So Chris Moore, every time the ball's been thrown in his direction, he's caught it, unlike the preseason. So, hey, that's all we ask is that when it really, truly counts, you get it done, and that's what he's done. But no Terry could be a big, big loss for this offense because, again, he may not be showing up in the stat sheet every single week, but his impact is felt on the football field because teams have to account for Terry McLaurin. And as we saw against the Raiders, he got behind the defense. As we saw against the Giants, he got behind the defense. He's a guy that is still a vertical threat, one of the few that we have on this team. If he can't go on Sunday, we're going to have to find a way to get it done. And we're going to talk about how that could potentially get done with what this team has done through the first 3 weeks of the season. But in that case, let's go ahead and get a word from one of our sponsors before we then turn our attention to in other news. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. We go in other news, and I want to talk about some impactful statistics for the Washington Commanders. Before we get to those, however, I want to talk about the power ranking. This is something that I like to keep my eye on. Not that it matters, but it's a nice exercise in futility each and every single week, because we're a good football team now. And when you suck, you don't care where you rank, right? If you're 26th this week, you don't give a shit if you're 28th next week or you're 24th the week thereafter. You don't give a shit, right? But when you're a good team, you want to know how others view you. We talk about this team, and I always talk about this bubble that we've created, this ecosystem, if you will. We have this incubator that we like to stay inside of because there's a lot of outside noise that is very negative and derogatory towards the team. And we like to stay in our little bubble where it's nice and it's comfy. And sometimes you got to go outside of your ecosystem and see what others are saying about your football team. So I like to do this every week. Go and see what the power rankings suggest this team is as we head into the upcoming week of football. So last week, we were on average the 7th best team in the league, right around where I thought we should be after 2 weeks of football. This week, if you total up all of these and divide, you get an average of 8.7. So somehow we win by 17 and we go down the power rankings. Like Tampa Bay jumped us, I guess, because they're undefeated. That's the only thing I could think of. They beat the Jets and they barely did it. And they've won all 3 of their games this season, but they barely won all 3 of their games. But they're undefeated nonetheless. So they left us this week. So that was one of the teams that I was like, But nonetheless, this is where we are on all of these major publications in terms of the power ranking. ESPN, we're ranked 10th. All right. NFL.com, we're 8th. USA Today, we're 8th. PFT, Pro Football Talk, we're 5th. Bleacher Report, we're 6th. Yahoo Sports, we're 13th, and that is the lowest that we are in anyone's power ranking, is 13th. CBS Sports, we're 7th. Sporting News, we're 8th. Sports Illustrated, we're 13th again. And Fox Sports has us 9th. So you total all that up, you divide by the number of publications, you get 8.7. When it comes to this, I like to just round down. Like, there's no reason to round up to 9. It's the first number is 8. That's where I usually stick with it. So we're 8th basically on average. So that's fair. Again, Tampa Bay won, again this week, stay undefeated. They jumped us from last week. I thought last week we were 7th. Tampa Bay was behind us last week. Now they're in front of us. So that pushes us back about a spot. It doesn't bother me one bit. But now you have to start making some statement wins. You got to take care of business against Atlanta. We're going to start to talk about the Falcons tomorrow and their situation. We'll take our first look at the Falcons on Wednesday. But after that game, and I talked about the need for this team to start 3-1, how important it was to get off to a fast start because the schedule then gets real after week 4. And so far, so good. You've gotten off to the 2-1 start. You have to complete the first quarter of the season 3-1. You have to do this. I know we have injuries. I know there are some question marks going into this game, but we have to find a way to get it done on the road at Atlanta before starting to embark upon the serious portion of this schedule when things really start to heat up, starting with the Chargers in week 5. So again, we'll get to the Falcons tomorrow, but that's where we stand right now from a power ranking standpoint. Now let's get to some impactful stats for this team. And I love these stats for this team starting off the season over the first 3 weeks, because DQ and Adam Peters have created a culture of BMF, right? Bad mother. And DQ, you can't talk it if you ain't live it. And DQ was run over by Marcus Mariota on Sunday, and he popped up as as Ooh said, like toast, right? And it was exemplary of what he's been preaching. And you got to practice what you preach. And they talk about being tough. They talk about being bad talking about being BMFs. Well, DQ was a BMF on Sunday, and this is a group of BMF guys that they've put together, right? And so these statistics to me are a stark contrast from where we were this time last year. And it just goes to show that they've put together a roster and created a culture of BMF. And so the first set of statistics at the very top that you're looking at right now, this is third down defense. And I couldn't be any prouder of this team through the first 3 weeks of the season. Now, again, I can't stress this enough. This is helped by the fact that you played the Giants in week 1 with Russell Wilson at quarterback, and you played the Raiders with Geno Smith in week 3. I don't give a shit, because last year's defense would have allowed those teams to still convert on third downs. Not saying it would have been at a high clip, but it would not have been at a low enough clip to have us in first place in third down defense, which is where we are. No other team in the league, as you can see, is sub 30% on third downs in terms of what they're holding opponents to. We are the only team sub 30% on third downs in terms of defensive efficiency. This is amazing. Remember where we were. I just want you to think about where we could talk about the lack of turnovers being produced. And like DQ said, we are officially in a drought. Okay. But think about where we were this time last year. Let me remind you in case you forgot. Okay. Last year, going into week 4, the Arizona game, the Commanders were giving up 62% of their third downs on defense last year. By far and away the worst in the league. 62% third down conversion rates for teams going against the Commanders defensively last year. We couldn't stop Daniel Jones in week 1 last year. We couldn't stop Baker Mayfield in week 1 last year. We couldn't stop Daniel Jones in week 2 last year. And we couldn't stop Joe Burrow in week 3 last year. We were giving up over 60% on third downs a season ago. This time last year, going into week 4 against Arizona. Stark contrast this year, where you're only giving up 28% on third downs. If that's not a turnaround, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. You look at the next statistic in the middle, and this is rush yards per attempt given up. Just think about where this team was a season ago. Think about where the rush defense was a season ago. Think about how bad we were stopping the run a season ago. We have not allowed a single 100-yard rusher. We haven't allowed a single back to touch 90 yards this season. The only reason that this average is not lower and we're not in the top 5 is because we've given up chunk plays on gadget plays, if you will. The Packers got us twice with Savion Williams carrying the football. That's why this number isn't where it ultimately could be. Russell Wilson got us with his legs in week 1. That's why this number isn't where. But if you're just talking strictly running backs, very few have done it better than the Commanders have this season. And this is proof of that. At Washington being 8th in the league at yards per carry at 3.7. Think about how many yards per carry we were giving up last season. Think about guys like Devin Singletary giving us work in week 2 last year. Think about in week 1, Tampa Bay's success on the ground. Think about the end of that game, how we couldn't stop the run, how they were gashing us. Big run and big play after big play. Now think about this year, and you think about shutting down Josh Jacobs, shutting down the Giants' run game to making it next to nothing, shutting down Ashton Genty. We're going to get our biggest and stiffest test in week 4 against Bijan Robinson because, as we know, they're struggling at the quarterback position right now, are the Atlanta Falcons. They're going to run the football. Bijan should have had 200 yards rushing against us last year. The man had 88 yards at halftime against the Commanders last year. And I don't want to say they just stopped running the ball because we did make adjustments at halftime to slow him down, but they should have gone to the run game more. They had penalties though, and we were better at stopping the run. They were behind the sticks, and so they didn't run it as much in the second half. Had they run it more in the second half, however, Bijan would have had well over 150 yards in that game. He was cooking us. We're going to find out just how good this run defense truly is. Biggest test to date for this run defense. Sunday, on the road at the Atlanta Falcons. But 3.7 yards per carry, good for 8th best in the National Football League. How far we've come from being the number 31st rush defense in the league a season ago. And at times feeling like the absolute worst in the league. And then the one at the very bottom. That is Washington's rush offense. We were really good at running the football last year. We're really good at running the football again this year. Here's the biggest difference. Last year, we were good at running the football because of the quarterback position. Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota, when he played, were so instrumental in the success of this team running the football. Without their rush yards, we would have been nowhere near the top of the league. I think we finished 8th in the league last year in rush yards, I believe. And for much of the season last year, we were hovering around or inside of the top 5 in terms of rush offense. We are right now second to only Buffalo in rush yards per game at 157.3 yards per game. So 157 yards a game. We've had over 200 yards in 2 out of our first 3 games rushing on the season. And it's not because of the quarterbacks being dynamic in the run game. It's because our running backs are actually putting in work. Now, it's running back by committee right now. No one's actually stepped up and taken the position by the horns. But it doesn't have to be anyone stepping up yet. The beauty is it could be J-Mac one week, which it was this past week. It could be Bill like it was in week 1. It could be C-Rod this week against the Falcons for all we know. As long as we're getting some production out of the run game from the running backs, that is a big time shift from what this was last year when we were like middle of the pack in terms of rush yards from the running backs a season ago. It's not like Marcus Mariota had 74 yards rushing in the game on Sunday. He didn't. It's not like Jaden killed it in week 2 against Green Bay. He absolutely didn't. He had a solid performance, against the Giants in week 1, but he wasn't the leading rusher. You know how many times Jaden Daniels was the leading rusher last year? Our quarterbacks have not led the team in rushing in any of the games this season. So what I'm telling you is these three statistics here show that this is a much more physical team than in past years. If they can stay dedicated to the run, and that's something that Cliff has to continue to do, but if they can stay dedicated to the run, be physical in the trenches, this is what they went out and revamped this offseason, both lines of scrimmages. They went into the trenches on both sides and said, if we're going to contend with the Philadelphia Eagles and teams of that stature and ilk, we got to be more stout in the trenches. These numbers reflect that exactly. Now it's about continuing to do this for the duration of the season. But as I did last week, and I had some people bitching and complaining last week about how we're only 1-1. You're all doom and gloom and no, just because you win doesn't mean it's all, candy and, it's all rose-colored glasses, right? We still have deficiencies. We still have shit that we got to clean up. And right now, according to John Keim, and this is a big one, we got to stop giving up big plays. We got to stop giving up chunk plays. Last week, I brought this up because we had given up a bunch of chunk plays to the Green Bay Packers. And I said, when's the last time you remember us giving up this many chunk plays early in the season? We did a really good job of stopping the Giants from hitting the big play because we saw that they wanted to, and it's not for a lack of trying. Russell Wilson took deep shots against us in week 1. We just defended them without being flagged for pass interference. We gave up a boatload of big plays against Green Bay last week. We got back on track against the Raiders, but we gave up some chunk plays against the Raiders, right? Jacoby Myers had a big catch and run. You had the big one over the top to Trey Tucker late in the game. I kind of want to excuse that one, but it still happened. You can't wipe that one away. It happened, right? The first play of the game offensively for the Raiders, I think it was a bootleg to Jacoby Myers, and it was a big gain down inside the Commanders' 15-yard line. You're like, what the hell, bro? You kick the ball out of bounds. They start at the 40. They run a simple boot, and they get outside. He finds Jacoby Myers, and all of a sudden, it's a 30, 40-yard gain, and they're inside the Commanders' 20-yard line. Like, what the F, bro? Y'all didn't learn from last week? First thing I put in my comment section of the mob was eye discipline. Clearly, somebody lost their luggage. He shouldn't be that wide open on a simple boot to start the game off. So John Keim writes, remember, he had us ranked 10th on the ESPN.com's or ESPN's power ranking, right? And he said it's the biggest issue on defense, big plays allowed. Says Washington is tied for second in the number of pass plays allowed of 15 yards or more with 20. That is a lot of big play or 15-yard pass plays given up or more in just 3 weeks. That means you're averaging just a shade under 7 of these given up a game. That is asinine, okay? There have been too many coverage mishaps, sometimes stemming from aggressive safety play to stop what appears to be a run only for the opposition to pass. The Commanders allowed 8 passes of 15 yards or more versus the Raiders. That's a lot. Again, Geno Smith had a really good day. I know some of it came in garbage time, but for a guy that had struggled, for a guy that had turned it over each of the first 2 weeks, for a guy that led the NFL in interceptions coming into our game, we didn't take advantage of Geno Smith's struggles in the game, which too often was due to blown coverage and not just getting beat. The secondary needs to play with more eye discipline in coverage. And again, this is from John Keim. So for all the good that they're doing defensively, stopping the run, winning on early downs, forcing third downs, and getting off the field on those third downs, for all the good that they're doing in these situations, they're still giving up too many chunk plays. This should have been a 44 or 41-13 type of victory, not 24. This should have been one of those extensive beatdowns where the score was so lopsided that you go, God damn. Instead, it was 34-24. When Luke McCaffrey scored the touchdown, it was 34-24. It was respectable to the point where if we don't convert that, the Raiders have a chance to somehow get this down to, they had no timeouts, but they would have had a chance to get this thing down to a one-score game, pending an onside kick, having a chance to somehow get back into this game magically. Luke McCaffrey put all of that to rest with his catch and run. But still, the fact that the game was even in question, like even in the moment, once we went up 34-10, this game was over, right? Once you got the big Terry catch and run and then the subsequent 1-yard Bill touchdown run, this game was done. And the fact that we even got to a point where they were within 10 was asinine. Had they converted the first 2-point conversion and then converted the second one, it would have been a 1-score game because we gave up too many big plays. So this is still an issue. It's still something that needs to be cleaned up. And I'm hoping that they are able, and with all of the turnover in the secondary, it makes me even more nervous and anxious that this might not get cleaned up. We'll find out what Trey Amos's status is tomorrow. That's a big one because we know Marshawn Lattimore is good. That is a sigh of relief. We're already down a man in the secondary with Jonathan Jones being placed on IR. We cannot afford to have another guy down. So it was great news that Marshawn Lattimore cleared concussion protocol and is really ready to go, barring any kind of setbacks for week 4 against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, can we get Trey Amos to be back and have that cornerback group back to being, full staff outside of Jonathan Jones? That will be great because we really don't want Mikey out there. We really don't want the general out there if at all possible. So the hope is that we are able to get both of these starting boundary corners back on the field, put Mikey back where he belongs. And then the only real questions then we have at that point would then be, can we figure out the safety rotation with all of the injuries? Hopefully we'll get an update on Percy Butler's status. He injured his hip. He was not ruled out of the game, so he may have been able to come back had the game been closer. But a lot of the guys that had injuries weren't necessarily ruled out of the game, but there was no reason to put them back into the game because the game at that point was already out of hand. So we don't know the status of Percy Butler. Obviously, Will Harris is on IR, might be done for the season. So you're going to have to see what these parts look like. They're going to insert Darnell Savage right into the mix. And unlike Preston Smith, who was able to be a healthy scratch his first week here, I think Darnell Savage is going to have to jump right into the mix, right into the fray in his first week here and be active. I don't think we can afford to not have him be active his first game here as a Commander. I expect Preston Smith to be active this week, however, and we'll see what that means for other positions on the team and how they go about the inactives on game day. But I expect Preston Smith to be active here. But again, I want someone to ask Joe Witt Jr. about Preston Smith because the way he carried it, I knew he was going to be inactive. I told you guys this last week. I said, that shit was pretty depressing, the way he just basically dismissed him. Like, yeah, he just got here. He's got to get in football shape. I'm not worried about him. Next man up, Javonte and all these guys are going to get more reps. Jacob Martin's going to play a little bit more. I was like, ew, like, what you doing? But hopefully now that he's got a, full week under his belt, a little bit more practice time this week, an opportunity to kind of get into game shape, so to speak, football shape, if you will. Hopefully he'll be active. And I think Darnell Savage is going to have to just jump right into the fray. And I think he's going to be active this week. Even if it's only in a special teams capacity, I think he's going to be active this week as well. So I know a couple of you mentioned this on X to me about, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson getting released. And I am not interested at all. This guy's a cancer, clearly. Like, the Eagles love him as a player. They hate him as a locker room teammate. That's why they moved on from him this past summer after knowing that they needed him and going and retrieving him because they couldn't get on the same page on a contract after the first time he left, right? The first time he left was because the numbers weren't, the math won't mathing for him. So he ended up signing a 1-year deal with the Lions. After that, he came back to Philadelphia the next year. They needed him because the defense took a serious step backwards. And then they go out and they're lights out defensively. He's, to me, a huge catalyst as to why he brings this level of, energy and toughness. And he's an asshole of the highest degree. He is an absolute dickhead, but he's a hell of a football player. But again, you can't preach culture and you wanting to have a certain type of guy in the locker room and then bring in someone like that. And clearly the Eagles felt like he was a cancer in their locker room. That's why they traded him. And then the Texans 3 weeks in said, okay, we had enough of this dude already. And they already moved on from him. So I want no parts of him. Feels like he's going to go back to Philadelphia. But in my mind, I'm like, if the Eagles saw fit to move on from him the first time because they didn't think he was a great fit in their locker room moving forward, why would they double back and retrieve him again? But stranger things have happened. I could easily see him going back to Philadelphia because that's where the fit is. But Andrew Makuba has played well. They drafted him to be the replacement there. I don't know if they even have space for him right now. We'll see where he ends up. But he's not a commander. I can tell you that much. So anyway, I digress. Let's get to the one comment we have, and then we'll get out of here. JB3, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JB3 writes, even Joe Barry and Manusky defenses could get turnovers. Could they? I mean, maybe they did. I can't remember how those defenses sucked ass though. So I'm like, if you're trying to gauge this defense based off of turnovers and try to compare them to Joe Barry and Greg Manusky's defenses, I don't know what to say to you, bro. Those defenses were hot garbage, okay, compared to this defense. There's no way that those two coordinators need to be in the same breath with what we've seen from this defense this year under Joe Witt Jr. Now, turnovers, that's a real thing. We haven't created them. We need to be better there. Like, I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. We're -1 in the turnover differential. I hate it. We turned it over once this season. We haven't created a turnover. I'm actually interested to see if you remember last week, I told you we were one of 6 teams to have not created a turnover this season. I wonder if we're still one of 6, or did some of those teams that were on that list create a turnover? And is that list down to 5 or 4 or 3 teams? That's not a list you want to be a part of. That's not a way that you want to live. But if you're going to keep getting off the field at the clip we're getting off the field at on third downs, you can live without turnovers. But I think what we've done collectively, this is complementary football. Collectively, what we've done is because we haven't gotten turnovers, special teams has stepped up and created short fields. The defense has stepped up, gotten off the field in some situations that have created short fields. That's what turnovers do. They flip the field position, right? They create momentum and they create instant field position and an advantage, unless you take it all the way, right? That's what turnovers usually do. A third down stop, if you pin an opponent inside their own 10-yard line and you get a 3 and out, well, you've just done the exact same thing, essentially, because you're going to get that football. And with Jalen Lane's ability to return punts, I can't think of the last time he had a punt return that was less than 7 yards. So his returns are usually like 10, 12 yards. So if he kicks it to the 38-yard line, he's going to return that thing out to about midfield. You got tremendous field position. You got Debo running back kickoffs. You got Jalen Lane returning punts. You got this defense getting off the field on third downs. You're creating opportunities to shorten the field for the offense. And so, no, we haven't created turnovers. But if you're going to keep getting off the field at that clip, and you're going to keep having the success that we've seen this team have special teams-wise in the returns game, you're going to put yourself in a position where turnovers and the need to have them are minimized. But look, who are we kidding? We want turnovers. Everyone wants turnovers. You want to take the football away. You want to create that momentum. You want to create the short field. You want all those things. So Hopefully we start getting them this week. But like I said, if you couldn't get them against the Raiders and Geno, I don't know when you're going to get them, to be honest with you. All I can hope, and this is all I'm going to continue to pray on, is that we can keep taking care of the football at a high level. Because if you're not getting takeaways and you're giving them away, you're going to lose football games because of it. So my hope is that we just continue to take care of the football. And if the turnovers come, they'll come. A wise man used to lie to me all the time and say, turnovers come in bunches. I'm not worried about them. They're going to come. They didn't come in bunches. Like, let's just hope that the turnovers eventually get here. But I'm not banking on it. Let's just take care of the football. Control the controllables. Let's just take care of the football, right? Jacob Cortez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Jacob writes, was 5 at practice today? There was no practice today. First practice of the week is Wednesday. So only time practice is earlier than Wednesday is if you have a short week. We do not have a short week. We play on Sunday. There was no practice today. So tomorrow, the question will be, was 5 at practice? He'll be at practice. He'll be at practice. The question is he off on the side field doing strength and conditioning work, or is he practicing with the team, actually doing individual drills, team, drills, et cetera, et cetera? That's going to be the real question. So I don't think there's a question any longer of, is he going to be out on the like, the first 2 days, we don't see Jaden Daniels out here anywhere. He was out there Friday. And I think because he was out there Friday and able to move around, I think he's going to be out there on Wednesday. Now, the question is, what is he doing out on the practice field? So we'll find out tomorrow, along with Noah Brown and John Bates and Trey Amos and Percy Butler and Terry McLaurin. Yes, the list is long. I told you, expect the injury report to have up to 12, possibly 14 names on it. I'm going to stop the number at 12 because you're going to have the 3 additional Wednesday vet rest day guys. Zach Ertz, not Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Von Miller, and Laramie Tunsil are all going to get vet rest days. So they're going to be a part of the list. I think the numbers on this list is going to get up to 12. It wouldn't shock me if it exceeds 12 and gets to like 14. But I'm gonna say 12, and then we'll get a real sense of what the injury report looks like on Thursday when it gets trimmed down to like 9 or so, because those vet rest guys have gotten pulled off the list. But in any event, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow. Also, keep your eyes peeled. Commanders Kings should be in full effect tomorrow night on the Commanders Kings channel. So be on the lookout for that. Assuming that everything goes according to plan, we will be live tomorrow night. I will have my Commanders Nightly News tomorrow. We will have our first practice of the week. We will get an update on some of these injured players, figure out what their status is for practice this week and leading into the game on Sunday. We'll get our first look at the Atlanta Falcons. A lot is going on in Atlanta right now, so we'll talk about it and start to peel back layers of their situation tomorrow as well. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News Live. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Until then, I'm your man Louie T, signing off. You guys take care. Have a good one. Peace.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone.